Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and we are coming at you from the wonderful Impala Films headquarters in sunny Southend-on-Sea to bring you the latest episode of Second Take Cinema. As always, I am your host, Jamie Evans, joined by Rory Jocelyn.
Hello, Cyberpunk Studios.
From Cyberpunk Studios.
Mention me. Make me feel pretty.
So today we are getting in our little time machine and we're going back in time to 1992 for a little known science fiction action horror.
It's a cyberpunk.
Kind of a comedy, kind of a whodunit, kind of a every fucking genre known to man movie.
Just say cyberpunk because it's definitely in that genre.
Yeah, starring. Ironically, though, that is the one. That's the one genre not listed on the Wikipedia article.
Yeah, I don't. So, some companies don't use cyberpunk as a genre.
Oh no, but I've seen it listed as a genre on Wikipedia for other films, just not for this one for some reason.
How strange.
But yeah, so this film stars Rutger Hauer and Kim Cattrall. Can you guess what it is, kids? Probably
Sex
not.
in the City with Rutger Hauer.
Probably, yeah, Sex in the City with Rutger Hauer in it, yeah.
That would be amazing.
That would be good. This, ladies and gentlemen, is Split Second. So, lights, camera, action, it's time for a second take. So yes, today we are talking about a film that I think it's fair to say most people haven't heard of. It's definitely one that kind of...
It's a cult hit.
Hasn't lingered in the public consciousness as some movies do. This is Split Second from 1992, directed by Tony Maylam for the majority, but as we will learn when we talk about the production, also kind of sort of directed by Ian Sharp and written by Gary Scott Thompson. It's a co-production between the United States of America and the United Kingdom. Stars Rutger Hauer, Kim Cattrall, Alistair Neil Duncan, Pete Postlethwaite, the late great, Ian Dury and Alan Armstrong. It was shot for a budget of $7 million and only grossed $5.4 million at the box office. So not exactly what you would call a hit. Its reception wasn't great either. Lawrence Cohn of Variety said Split Second is an extremely stupid monster film, boasting enough violence and special effects to satisfy less discriminating video fans. Chris Willman of the Los Angeles Times wrote, "It's hard to think of a less satisfying creature feature in recent memory than the simply terrible Split Second," where Stephen Holden of the New York Times called it fairly dull.
I think those are a bit overly harsh, but we'll get to that.
Here's a harsh one for you. Doug Broad of Entertainment Weekly called it utterly soulless and imitative. In Time Out, I don't think you could call it soulless. Imitative, definitely.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. It imitates a lot of other films, but I don't think I would call it soulless.
And lastly, in Time Out London, Nigel Floyd wrote, "This derivative eco-horror movie recycles dozens of disposable plots. However, largely due to the film's unintentionally hilarious nature and well-respected performances by the cast, the film has since developed a cult following."
And that is the most accurate of the lot, I think, because it is derivative. It does have some good performances, though we'll get to those individually as we go. and it does have a cult following. This has got a special edition released by Arrow Films, which actually this is the version we watched was ripped from, because it knows they can sell it.
And just a bonus little fun fact for you: Belgian grindcore band, whatever the fuck grindcore is, Belgian grindcore band Aborted, used an image from this film as the cover of their first album, The Purity of Perversion. Anyway, this was an entry by Rory. You chose this one. Yes. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how you first came across Split Second and why you chose to give it a second take?
Sure. So I did not watch Split Second when it was current because I was 6. So it was definitely not the time to be watching an 18-rated movie. I watched this actually only about 2-3 years ago, maybe 4 at the most, but I think it was only about 2 or 3 years ago. I borrowed the Blu-ray from a friend of mine. I watched it, and I quite enjoyed it. He recommended it to me because he knows I like cyberpunk movies, and in general, like, cyberpunk movies are never normally high art. There's not many that will hit that barrier.
Well, do you think that's just interrupting for a minute? Do you think that's a problem with the genre as a whole, or just that there's not many people who do the genre well?
I don't think it's no. I don't think it's an issue with the genre per se. I think the problem with the genre is that because it's largely, certainly after Blade Runner, it became largely a visual medium. And that's certainly one of the things that I like about it, is the visual side. But because it largely became a visual medium, and basically it was arseholes, that's the kind of the punk element of it. It was arseholes in dystopia, colourful light equals cyberpunk. And that's massively downgrading what cyberpunk actually is. But as a production budget, that's an easy thing to achieve. And because it lent itself well to the grotty nature of home video and sort of, video nasties almost in its appearance, because you wouldn't expect it to look glossy. It's a cyberpunk. So because of that, it also it largely emerged. You had big budget ones, which were normally a little bit more high art, things like Blade Runner, which I know we're going to come to later in this series. But in general, it was mostly low-budget films being made in this sort of genre, because they went, well, it will look like shite because we haven't got the budget for high-end film reels and lighting, etc., but that's okay. This genre is basically, do that, and it looks fine. And you ended up getting a lot of schlock. So, and because it was Flavour of the Week, Flavour of the decade, from about 1983-84 all the way up to the mid to late 90s, it started dwindling off in the 90s. You ended up with a lot of more basic... Split Second fits this. It's low-budget schlock that sometimes tries to say something more insightful, but never quite gets there because, essentially, it's meat being ground and churned out. There's a series called Trancers, which is a very good example of this as well. Very low budget... It had certain actors that people who follow cyberpunk style genre films will know, but it's to anyone who doesn't really like cyberpunk, I don't think it would grab anyone. Split Second is a little bit different though. So when I saw this film, I know there's a little bit more thought being put behind it, but it's very clear to see that it didn't get enough time in the writing room. Because it has a lot of really good ideas, and there's a lot of really fun and interesting elements, but they never really gel. And I think it needed at least one more pass at the script to go, you know what, to make these things match up, we need to solidify this character this way, this character needs to do this a bit more, we need to focus on this and this area and move away from this, and then just really knuckle down on what the nuts and bolts of the script were. Because it went into production too fast, I think, it didn't have that time.
Right.
It only had 3 weeks in the writing room.
Are you sure?
I'm pretty certain that's what it
said.
Because
I just read a thing saying he actually wrote the script in 1988, and it took ages for them to...
That was a different script, pretty much. So, I've got that on here.
It was heavily rewritten.
Yeah, so that was Pentagram. That was just a buddy cop horror movie. But this has those elements still in there, but there is a lot of rewrite, and you can tell sometimes characters drop out of their story progression. So Rutger Hauer's character ends up having a sidekick in this film that he doesn't like, but that guy eventually starts to get into the same mindset as Rutger Hauer's character, starts becoming a bit more chaotic and a bit more psychotic. And then there's a bit when they get to the final point where they're going to attack the creature at the end, and all of a sudden he goes back to his slightly more original, not quite all the way, but more to his nerdy side, like, I don't know, and it's like, you've already seen more mutilation in dead bodies than this, you've already seen, like, why are you regressing back a bit? And it's just for the sake of making Rutger Hauer's character look a bit more hardy. But it's like, another pass at that script, you would have seen, I would hope, you would have seen that those two don't match up, and you would have either elevated him at the end, or slightly reduced his growth earlier in the film. But yeah, so I watched it. I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good film, not a great film. Again, great elements, not gelling, but I enjoyed it. And when you came up with this idea of reviewing something and seeing if it still holds up, this was an absolute obvious candidate. It's not a treasured film, and it's not, I mean, it sounds, from the reviews you read, did you only pick the worst ones? Because that sounds like it's been slammed hell.
That was all of them that were listed on the article.
Wow. But I mean, over time, because it's got the cult following, it's obviously had something of a reevaluation. It not necessarily to say that it's, cosmic gold.
Yeah, not necessarily, because we're according to that anyway, and obviously that could be wrong, but the cult following is to do with it being so bad it's funny.
Sure. But you can see that. But I don't think the film shied away from being comedic. I think some people were trying to look for more depth than there was in it. And that's because the film had the potential for more depth. I think we need to start talking about the film before I kind of reveal anything else. But essentially, I thought you'd enjoy it, not because you'd think it was a sterling film. I thought you might enjoy it because of the disparate elements, the horror elements, and you and I are quite different on taste, but one thing that I do know you love is horror, and while this isn't unique in horror, it's at least different. So yeah, what was your views on having finally seen it?
As always, this is a spoiler warning for the audience, because we will be going into plot details. If you don't want the plot spoilt for split second, then please turn off now, okay? Got you. So, this film is set in the then future, but we've passed it now, of 2008.
Yes.
And due to, as the opening crawl tells us, due to years of human ignorance of global warming, London is flooded because the Thames has risen.
Yeah, the water level's risen across the world, and the Thames is always overflowing. You never see it overflowing.
That's something that hasn't changed at all. There's still people in society ignoring global warming, so the film is still definitely accurate in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely.
But anyway, London is mostly flooded, except when the budget doesn't make that convenient, and then it's just a little bit wet. They just got lucky and filmed on a rainy day. Yeah. Rutger Hauer plays a disgraced police detective called Harley Stone.
Yep. You don't find out his first name is Harley until late in the film, though.
No, I know.
And then stutters a reveal like, isn't that funny? It's like, it's just a name, dude.
I know.
I think the reason it was meant to be stupid is because there's the Harley
Davidson. Because it's a girly name.
Well, no, it's because there's a Harley Davidson logo on the wall behind him, and there's a Harley Davidson motorcycle. Yeah. The problem is 2 years after this film, another film came out called Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man, which had neither the backing of Harley Davidson nor Marlboro. It somehow got away with it. And that film stars Mickey Rourke. And one of the Baldwin brothers no one cares to remember. Daniel Baldwin? It might have been Daniel Baldwin.
Basically any of them except Alec.
Yeah, basically anyone who's not Alec is one of the Baldwins that you don't care about. So yeah, that was kind of always... like that idea of, it's Harley and he's got a Harley. Yeah. That didn't really bother me because I'd seen that film first.
Yeah. But basically, he's this disgraced police detective who is on the hunt for a serial killer who he seems to have a weird borderline psychic connection with. He can almost sense when the killer is near. And at the start of the film, he goes to a underground nightclub. And while he's there, right under his nose, a partier at the club is murdered by this killer, tears her heart right out of her chest.
Yeah.
And they later find it with a great big old chomp taken right out of it, don't they?
Yeah, so later on the heart is delivered to the police station that Harley is arguing with the chief in, and it's this freezer container, and when they open it up, the heart is in there.
Yeah.
And
He gets
signed for Harley Stone as well.
Yeah. His police captain, chief, whatever you want to call it, pairs him with another detective called Dick Durkin, which
a much more adult name.
which might be the most porn star sounding name I've ever heard for a dude who is the least porn star dude I've ever seen.
Yeah, we get a scene where he explains when he's talking to Harley Stone, it's like, I run 5 miles every morning. You run 5 miles every morning, and don't you have time to fuck or something like that? He's like, oh, every single night. And then
he says sounds like you need to get laid.
Oh, that
and he's like, I get laid every night.
Yeah, it's like, but we know there is literally nothing sexual about this man, apart from later, which we'll get to, which is quite funny.
So he's basically a big old nerd, and he is paired with Harley with the idea that he will report back to the chief if Harley's getting out of control.
Yeah.
What actually ends up happening, as they have a few close encounters with the monster and the bodies start to pile up, is he actually starts to become more and more like Harley.
Yeah.
Also in the mix, you've got Kim Cattrall, Sex and the City's Kim Cattrall,
yep,
who plays the ex-wife of Rutger Hauer's former partner, who we see in a flashback died hilariously in the sewers by being pulled under the water. And also, what we weren't clear on until right near the end is that whether they'd been together themselves or not.
It's not actually revealed until the end that they had been a couple. It was like, there's meant to obviously be sexual tension.
Yeah.
But you don't know if that's like they've been holding off because they are both connected to the dead guy, or if, it's like, oh yeah, you were with her and then you left her.
As always, being the sick perv that I am, let's start with sex as a topic of discussion. Rutger Hauer and Kim Cattrall have no chemistry in this movie.
Yeah.
Like, it might be the worst on-screen kiss I've ever seen.
And they do it twice at least. Maybe 3 times.
That first one especially
one is sloppy. The sloppy
Rutger. It's clearly meant to be like, oh shit, I might die, I'm just going to go for this.
Yeah.
That's clearly what's going through Rutger Hauer's character's head.
But it doesn't... But it just... There's no magnetism in it.
No, it just feels like he kind of shoves his face at her.
Have my face.
Yeah, but what makes this ironic is...
Rutger, how are you so bad at kissing?
What makes this worse...
Sorry.
What makes this worse is that he has much more chemistry, sexual chemistry, with Dick Durkin.
So he doesn't have any with Dick Durkin for the most of the film, and then when Dick starts to come around to his way of thinking,
he's like stroking his hair, he's rubbing his earlobe.
Yeah,
they are always
they're
filmed
sharing cigars.
They're always filmed like they're literally almost nose to nose, as if they're about to kiss.
What really shows it off is so there's a bit where they're picking up guns. So they're like, right, we're gonna fuck this creature up, blah 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 blah. They're picking up guns from the police station, and as they're walking out, Dick Durkin is now in the same headspace as Harley Stone. He's like, it must be this, and he's like calculating how the villain is working, and like. Harley's like with him, arm around him. There's been no contact at this point other than ribbing or taking the piss or hurting each other. At this point, now he's got his arm around him. Yes, tell me more. And they're walking along and they're sharing a cigar. And it's obviously done for comedy, which is fine. It works as a piece, but not with the whole of the film.
It's the rubbing the earlobe that did it for me.
That was later.
That's an incredibly...
That's in the sewer. That's when they're after the creature.
When he first grabs his ear, I was like, oh, he's doing that thing that a mum does to a kid where it's like, yeah, come here, you little shit.
But it's not.
But he then sits there stroking his earlobe.
Literally stroking
and hey, you know what? We've already said the film is imitative. Fuck it. lean into that. Better movie.
Yeah.
I've never seen a gay cyberpunk detective thriller before.
Yeah, I have to say, I think that's something that is often overlooked, and it's probably because I don't think it was intentional and somehow got in there. Either that, or Rutger Hauer made a decision that he didn't inform the director of. Maybe because it's split between two different directors. But it's a very strange way, because the script obviously has nothing in it that would insist that these two have any gay connection.
Yeah.
But for whatever... And it's not necessarily that the other guy is doing it, because he's just acting his part. It's very much something that Rutger Hauer is doing.
Yeah. So Rutger Hauer makes some interesting choices in this film.
Yeah.
Because his character is very inconsistent. He seems to alternate between being ultra macho, cigar chomping. You could almost imagine Schwarzenegger playing, like peak Schwarzenegger
It's proper
playing
toxic
this role.
masculinity at certain points, isn't it?
You know, yeah, he's got the great big leather coat. He's walking around with the cigar and the sunglasses, and he's basically like, fuck everyone else, I'll do what I want to do, blah blah blah. And then these moments of him just leaning into the whole nuttiness of it all and being like, they're here and stuff like that. And,
Yeah, where he goes to sort of the more madness side of Harley Stone.
but there doesn't seem to be any, far be it from me to criticise him, of course, but there doesn't seem to be any graduality between, any gradient between those two states. It ping-pongs from one to the other.
Yes. There's something that happens quite a bit in this film, is people ping-pong from one to the other. Kim Cattrall is quite consistent, but she doesn't...
But also dull.
Yeah, she doesn't have a huge graduation for her character, really.
No.
She has, like, a scene where she's, like, you know, she's always kind of the ex-lover of him, really. The one bit she gets, which is a little bit deeper than that, is after she's been bitten and she's, like, washing herself clothed in the bath, because she's having a bit of a breakdown because she keeps hearing the monster. That works well, though that is also the point where the gay bit sort of comes out most, because that's a bit where he kisses her, leaves to talk to Dick, and then all of a sudden you're like, hang on, there's way more chemistry with these two than there was in that bathroom. What the fuck? But yeah, there was... Also, the police chief was good.
Yeah.
I like the police chief. He needed to just accept that he was balding, though, and not try and keep that hairline going, because it's so, like, the top of his forehead is so far back. It's like, dude, just accept your balding, man. But yeah, once he finds out, like, because he's basically been the straight-laced guy the whole time. It's like, damn it, Stone, you gotta do things by the book. You gotta blah, 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 the whole time. And then it gets to the end when Dick Durkin is now joining in, and they're doing the cigar sharing, and it's like, oh, this is how it's working. He basically explains that the monster is basically reincarnation of Satan in some way. And then as the two walk off, the camera just watches the captain going, oh, that's it, is it? How am I supposed to write a fucking report on that? And he just ends up having a fucking rant at people. Just walks past this random woman and goes, yeah, and you.
Yeah.
It's like, what the fuck? It's like, and what's interesting, this is something that, I don't know if it was intentional or not, but would have made, if you were to do a remake of it, maybe we should do this later, but would be a more interesting element, is the way that Rutger Hauer's character, Harley Stone, how his psychosis starts to rub off on others. Because it rubs off on Dick Durkin to the point where Dick Durkin basically becomes like a lesser version of him.
Yeah.
And then at that last moment, he's finally managed to crack the captain, and he's started doing it, walking around ranting like Rutger Hauer's character does. Yeah. It would be interesting. It's like almost a narcissistic spread out where he starts to influence others into being like him. That's... But yeah, that might be giving the film a bit more credit than it deserves. It's definitely in the film. I just don't know if that was on purpose or whether that was pure coincidence.
Yeah. My brain's just completely gone. Give me a minute. Right. Just sticking with performances for a minute then, that's the first area we've chosen to talk about. It is a weird cast of characters. So this is a British-American co-production. It's nearly an entire British cast, apart from Kim Cattrall, who's American, I believe.
Yes.
And Rutger Hauer. I think Rutger Hauer is Danish.
Rutger
but
Hauer, I think he's
most famous,
Swedish, isn't he?
Huh?
Let's have a look.
I think he's Danish.
He's
but
Dutch.
But he's most famous for being in American movies, and he's playing an American here.
Oh Oh, blimey, Kim Cattrall was born in England.
Oh, fair enough. I take it back. I
But
retract.
she's got an American accent in this, though.
Yeah.
She's not playing an English person.
Oh,
Maybe
well.
she's lost the accent by that point.
I retract my statement anyway.
Yeah.
The performances all kind of feel sort of larger than life and out of this world a little bit. Even in the smaller characters, like extras in the club are very sort of over the I've been in nightclubs.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But this is like...
Well, it's a strip club, really, isn't it?
Well, yeah, it's like a weird strip club as well, because there's a girl in bondage outfit whipping her tutters out and shaking them about. I was quite appreciative of this scene.
Yes, that was terrible. I don't know how they...
How dare they put this in my film?
No, it's disgusting.
But even the other cops as well, like, the other cops seem very... everything's just a little bit heightened is what I'm trying to say.
Yes, it's not naturalistic.
No, and there's almost a cartoonishness to some of the bits. For example, there's a bit where Rutger Hauer thinks he can sense the monster, and he goes running down this alleyway, and he starts firing his gun into the air, and then you get like the clicking of like 100 guns cocking, as all these other cops' guns just enter the frame and surround him around the neck. It's a very cartoon image.
Yeah, I mean... I get the impression, and this might just be, I don't know, I get the impression that if they'd made this as an anime, it would have been considered an amazing film. Because, genuinely, the things that this film gets wrong are generally given a free pass in anime, I find. It's no worse in its composite of disparate bits than a film like Akira. And Akira gets given this great blessing, this amazing film. Now, it was amazingly well animated, but I honestly, we'll come to Akira another time. I don't think the story holds up. At least not the one in the anime.
I do believe Akira is on the list, isn't it?
Yeah, but Split Second also doesn't hold together as well. I'm not saying it's better than Akira, but I'm saying it's got the same problems as Akira. And yet Akira is given this whole, this plinth of amazingness to it. And Split Second is down here in the depths. And I do think it's the difference between what's expected between an animation and live action.
Yeah.
For example, some of the bits that I liked, and sometimes they're small things, the idea that London's flooded was actually quite an interesting choice.
Yeah.
Because it just made it more difficult for them to actually film, because they had to flood everything whenever they wanted to shoot there. But the benefit of that meant the environments look unique, even in a standard London setting.
Yeah.
And there were certain elements like when Dick Durkin first sort of starts trying to chat to Harley outside, and Harley's like basically drives away and his Jeep goes, "Follow me." And he does like a quick J-turn in his truck and moves away. The splash of the water coming off the bottom and splashing over Dick Durkin.
Yeah.
Those are little subtle details that A, didn't need to be there, but B, they add a lot to the vibe of the visuals that we're getting. And in anime, I think that would have been appreciated more than it is because it's live action. Where it's like, well, of course, you just filled it with water and it splashed. I was like, yeah, but in an animation, you would have given it praise for the fact that it was a unique idea.
And you get some cool things like, there's a few times in the film where water will be running from either under a door or down a flight of stairs.
Yeah.
And that's very cool as well, because I mean, it's one thing for it to be standing water, but when it's actually moving water as well, it's a little bit like, oh, right, I see. The only thing that lets the effect down is there are a handful of shots, usually the ones that are done near more busy streets or more recognisable parts of London, where they clearly weren't allowed to, you can't shut down Trafalgar Square for a day while you flood it and film here.
Yes, which was a shame, but again,
but it's not a big budget film.
No, they didn't have the budget. Like, if it was a Bond film, they probably would have done it. But although nowadays they'd have CGI'd it, but certainly at the time they probably would have shut down Trafalgar Square for Bond, but not for Split Second. They weren't doing it for Split Second.
So as you've already said, the thing with this film is there's a lot of good elements in it that don't necessarily coalesce into a solid movie.
Yes.
The biggest one of those for me is the tone.
Yeah.
Because the tone is all over the place.
Yeah, sure.
And the film is at its best, actually. This film is at its best when it is going the more buddy comedy route.
Yeah.
With...
You can tell that's the bit that's had the most work behind it.
Yeah. I'm thinking particularly of the whole middle bit where Durkin starts imitating Harley. That is when the comedy was most working in the film.
Yes.
Because some of the bits before that don't work for me.
No, so Durkin comes across as a bit too cartoonishly nerdy or cartoonishly posh.
Yeah, and Rutger Hauer's too cartoonishly angry. Like, there's the bit, isn't there, where they pull up to a crime scene and Durkin goes to get out, and Rutger Hauer just kicks the door shut.
Yeah, which is funny, but it's like you're not going to start off a good investigation this way, and there is no point to it. It wasn't like, I kicked the door shut. Why are you being a dick to me? Well, you were going to step in that. It was just to be a dick.
Yeah.
They come from too far an extreme at the beginning. Like, the way they meet up in the middle is perfect. That bit's fine. But because you're all right, you're talking about a cartoonishly insane, sort of Dirty Harry imitation.
Yeah. Meeting
a cartoonishly off the books fucking posh white boy, wet behind the ears, quite literally in this film. And then just suddenly bomb, and then they're like the same. And it's like, it's a little bit too far of a drive to get them to that point.
Yeah.
I will point out one other actor before we move on.
Okay, go ahead.
There is Tony Steedman is in this film. Now, Tony Steedman is I only really know him for one other role, and I love him. And when I saw him, I was like, oh, "It is you!" Anyone who's seen Bill and Ted, for specifically the first one, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventures, he is Socrates, aka Socrates, and I'm like, it's Socrates.
Is he not in the second one then?
No, he's not. But looking at his IMDb here, he is actually British, which I didn't know. But cool. He was born in Warwickshire, apparently. He's passed away now, unfortunately. He died in 2001. But this was one of the last films he did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But yeah, he was great as Socrates.
Yeah.
And it was great to see him again. You know, sometimes there's those smaller actors that, you know, they never had like Keanu Reeves style fame. But when you see him in a film, they just kind of warm your heart.
Yeah,
that's Socrates.
So, what do we think about the effects in this film?
I think the gore effects are really well done. I mean, you'd know more than I would about that because you've seen a lot more horror movies. But they don't look particularly plastic or fake. Certainly, it avoids a lot of the main shite that we get in modern movies where a lot of it's CGI'd. This doesn't do that. It's all puppet work, it's all meat puppets, all practical effects and costumes. There are some bits that don't work quite so well. But overall, I think they work quite well. What were your... Again, I'll lean to your wider expertise in this field. What do you think of the effects?
I didn't mind them. I was quite glad to see that we weren't just killing victims off of screen. Yeah. You get the pretty cool effect with the girl in the bathroom when her heart's been ripped out. That happens a few times where it's people with their hearts missing. So they're not the best effects I've ever seen, but they're more than serviceable. The main effect that you get is the victims of the creature who have their hearts ripped out. That's the most common one. And you've got these fake prop hearts, and they're very cool as well.
Everything looks suitably wet.
Yes, it does. It does.
And I don't mean just the environments. I mean like the meats and everything else that they have. Yeah. It's not like a lot of films, they're quite dry. And that's when you can tell it's a puppet more so than anything.
The actual creature itself was a bit of a problem for me.
Yes.
When you're only seeing glimpses of it, I was fine. I was like, oh, cool. It's a big thing. It's got claws. That's all I've really seen of it, except in silhouettes. And then when you actually see it at the end...
When you get it in full light.
Which to be fair isn't much. You only get one or two shots, I think, of it in full light, but one of those is like near enough a close-up of it.
Yeah.
It's got this skull that is just like a blunted down xenomorph skull.
Yeah.
Complete with all the teeth.
Yeah, so it's what's shown early on is when the heart is delivered into the police station for Stone, it's got a bite out of it. And it gets sent to the lab so that they can make a mould of what the tooth structure would be of the person who bit it, thinking that it would be a human face. And then when it comes back, the mould is quite demonic looking, like this, more of a mandible really than anything.
Big teeth.
Yeah, huge teeth, crisscrossing all over the place. Wouldn't actually be very practical, but either way. And then when you see those teeth later on, yeah, they match. But because the head is basically a xenomorph head. You're right.
Just shortened.
Slightly shortened xenomorph head. And teeth right at the front where you'd expect them to be on a xenomorph from Alien, if anyone really doesn't get the reference. But when the mouth opens, like yourself, I half expected a smaller mouth to come out.
Yeah, there's a moment where they fully trick you into thinking that's what's going to happen.
Oh, here it comes. But no, that doesn't happen. But it feels like it could, because this alien is just an amalgamation of everything else. Now, according to the trivia on this film, the monster they only had 3 weeks to make it. So it makes sense to me that rather than inventing something wholly unique for this demon spawn Satan thing, they decided to lean quite heavily on established tropes. But either way, I could have done with something slightly more original.
Yeah, I 100%, when you get that close-up on its mouth, I literally turned to you, didn't I? And I said, I swear to God, if a little mouth comes out of this big mouth, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm done. For me, it is weird, because on the one hand, the setting is good. The setting works. The way it's shot works for the most part. I'm a fan of the colour design. There's some bits where it's oddly chosen. There were bits that I thought were going to turn out to be dream sequences because it's oddly shot in soft focus. Yeah, but it's not. In terms of a visual look, though, it really, this film does not feel like a 90s movie. No. This feels like 1983 or 84. It feels like Terminator 1 era.
Yeah, so I said this to you about the lighting, and there's something they do very successfully in this film, I think, because I'm fairly certain it was on purpose, which is to get the color of white in this film basically imitates the white balance levels of the original Terminator movie. And I know that from James Cameron's commentary on Terminator, some of the white, when they're on the streets, to get that lighting to look the way it does, you can't do it the way he did anymore, was because he shot in particular places underneath certain street lamps, and those street lamps used mercury to light themselves. Now, mercury is considered
dangerous,
highly dangerous. My granddad had some, and
you can get mercury poisoning, can't you?
You can. Oh, mate, mercury is horrendous for you. He had it in a vial, and he had it because he I don't know why he had it, but it was left over.
So he could poison you one day when you made that one pun that was just too annoying. He could be like, "Take this, you little shit."
But yeah, he had it as a leftover from World War II. And when my dad, when he passed away, my dad was like, well, maybe we can sell that somewhere or whatever. So
to who? I don't know. Fucking serial killer?
Well, so we didn't know. We didn't know much about mercury. So he took it to an expert and was like, what would this go for? What's this used for? You know, why would my grandfather have had it? And you just said, yeah, that's considered radioactive almost. You can't sell that. You shouldn't even have it. It's considered it's illegal for you to even own it.
So did they take it off you?
No. I can't remember what my dad did with it after that. I don't think he's got it anymore because we've got no use for mercury.
He's kept it so he can kill you.
Yeah. But anyway, they were using mercury lamps in the city that they were filming in and lighting so the Terminator would walk underneath these lamps.
Right.
And that would give for some reason, the mercury lamps would give off this blue-white light. And they managed to do that, I don't think, because we didn't have mercury lamps in the UK, certainly not in London. And yeah, it has that same glowing blue-white balance. I'm very fascinated about how they did it, because it's as you say, it's 10 years later, and they didn't have the practical props to create it. I'm guessing it's something they've done in post.
Maybe they've just white balanced it. Deliberately white balanced it wrong.
Yeah, maybe. I would be fascinated to know the actual answer, because it could just be a case of balancing in post, but I've not seen, certainly now where with digital videography, it's so easy to basically create color balance. You can create color balance, what they call defaults, and plugins to make. That's it, LUTs. You can create LUTs to basically connect into your footage and make it look a certain way. This is my Bond style LUT. This is I want it to look like Alien. This is I want it to look like this. But I've never seen
the meme, isn't it? there's the meme, isn't there, about I don't know if you've ever seen it, but they put a picture of Mexico, like a picture of actual Mexico,
Yeah.
and they go Mexico in reality, and it looks like a normal place,
Yeah.
and then it's Mexico in films, and there's stills from about 10 different films,
Yeah.
all set in Mexico that have all used the same LUT to give Mexico that sickly yellow look that films always give Mexico. Even Breaking Bad does it. I'm rewatching Breaking Bad at the minute, and when they do the flashbacks to Gustavo Fring in Mexico,
it's notably more yellow-orange.
yeah, they've got that yellow-orange thing to them, which is it's really weird that at some point someone in Hollywood just decided that's what Mexico looks like on film.
Yeah, and now that is Mexico.
Because it's not what it looks like.
No.
Like, if I went to Mexico, I would fully expect everything to be yellowish.
Yeah, and that's something that's quite interesting about modern cinematography, is a lot of it is colour balanced in a way that is unrealistic, unnatural. It isn't the way it actually looks, but it's designed to give a specific vibe. And Mexico is a very basic version of that. But one thing that's interesting in modern cinematography is, have you heard of I think it's the 3-colour rule?
Right.
So you have 3 primary colours that are in your shots, and you'll have one which is your main colour, one which is like your edge colour for like your extra, and then you've got a third colour which is like your pop colour, which is there to make something look a bit more vivid. And it works. It makes things easy to follow visually. It makes things look a little bit too uniform for my liking. Cyberpunk wouldn't work with it because Cyberpunk requires you to have neon colours flashing all over the show. But it is interesting that there is that difference. And I do wonder if there might be a lot to try and match this film. Though people probably ask, why would you want to make it look like an 80s film? But it's coming back, people. Like, it's already back.
Like, 80s nostalgia's been going for ages.
Yeah, but the thing is, what people try and recreate with 80s nostalgia is the videotape look. So they'll film something on digital, and then they'll put it in a post-production to give it like that videotape wobble and like the distortion from VHS.
And the snow. And...
Yeah, and they'll overdo the green and the red that have... I can't remember what it's called. I used to know it off the top of my head, so I do apologise. But where you get red and green bleed at the edge of objects and colours. And they do all of that, but that's TV, and videotape. That's not cinema of the era.
Yeah.
And for some reason, we don't try and replicate cinema of the era very much, which I always find a bit interesting and confusing, because ultimately that's what people remember of the 80s.
Maybe, or maybe it's because what a lot of these people who are now engaged in 80s nostalgia are people who grew up during the 80s and probably didn't go to the cinema that often. Their memories is watching things on VHS tape.
That's true.
Which is why that's the look they try and imitate.
Yeah, so I mean, seeing Terminator on Blu-ray in as closer to its original cinematic look than, videotape would. That would not have been their first experience of Terminator. It would have been the VHS tape with the wobble and shit. Yeah. So maybe that's the reason. Yeah. But sorry, I've gone off on a bit of a technical waffle
No,
there,
go ahead.
But I do find that fascinating. It is a visual effect that I'd like to try in a film at some point. It's certainly one that I'm interested in trying to. How do I get that?
The film definitely has. Again, talking about how it's all these different things that don't quite gel, is there's an almost, in the middle bit, there's an almost, I want to say Verhoeven feel to the middle, where it's almost, Paul Verhoeven does this thing where he amps up violence.
Yes.
In order to make it comedic, because it's pushing the limits of how ridiculous it is.
But that's basically the premise of a lot of his film. RoboCop had that.
Starship Troopers
is all that.
That middle bit where Rutger Hauer and I actually don't know who plays Durkin, but those two guys are literally just chomping cigars, loading up massive fucking Gatling guns, which Socrates mistakenly calls a shotgun. I'm like, that ain't I don't know.
It's
jack
not a
about
shotgun.
Guns.
It's clearly a chain gun.
Yeah, I don't know jack about guns, but I know that's not a shotgun.
Dick Durkin was played by Alistair Duncan.
But yeah, there was this almost Verhoeven, almost Sam Raimi level of fuck it, let's just go funny with this. The problem is none of this works when you stitch it together, because I definitely think, I don't know if you agree, there's no tension in the film. I was never in suspense.
So there's levels on that, I think. I will agree it's not like Wages of Fear style, like you're gripped at the edge of your seat. What I would say, though, is it's not so lacking in tension where you're just sitting there going, well, when's the next fucking scene coming around?
No.
It's, it holds enough, but I think it could have done a lot better if the disparate elements gelled together more.
The villain...
So you were actually waiting on what... Because it does convincingly twist. It just... For some reason, you are right, you're not sitting there going, oh my god, the twist!
It never feels like they're, as he actually says, Rutger Hauer has a line where he says, we're not hunting it, it's hunting us.
Yeah, that never hits with the weight it should.
Yeah, you never feel that they are being hunted. Not like, say, John Carpenter's Halloween or James Cameron's Terminator 1, where you really feel this pursuit. And like every time Arnold Schwarzenegger turns up in that movie, you're like, oh shit, he's after them again. Or every time Michael Myers, Laurie Strode looks out of her window and he's there standing in the garden, and you're like, oh no, he's coming to get her. You get this sense of like doom impending. Yeah. You don't really get that with this creature, and that might be because you literally never really see it properly until the end. And it might be taking the idea of less is more a little too far, actually.
Yeah, I can agree. What's interesting about Alistair, the guy who plays Dick Durkin, is what he's been in since.
Oh, do tell.
So, not a lot of stuff that we necessarily would have seen, though he's had like bit parts. He's been in Highlander TV series Hercules. He's been in Xena Warrior Princess, Babylon 5. He's Sabrina the Teenage Witch, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Angel.
Oh, who was he in Buffy?
In Buffy, he was in 2 episodes in the year 2000 as a character called Collins. That would have been the 3rd or 4th season. But either way, like again, he's been all these one-off kind of bit parts that are only in 1 episode, sometimes stretched to 2. I'm guessing as a 2-parter. But after about 2003 onwards, mostly known for video games. And what's strange is there's a lot of big ones. So Killer 7 he was in. He's been in Rainbow Six Lockdown as a voice. Onimusha, which I know is big. He's the narrator and the archaeologist in Lara Croft Tomb Raider Legend, the 2006 Tomb Raider game. He's in Tomb Raider Anniversary. He's in Mass Effect 2, Final Fantasy... Oh, God, what's that? 14. XIV, it's 14. He's been in... Yeah, he's been in several Professor Layton games, Uncharted 3, Elder Scrolls,
more of a voice
Skyrim.
actor now.
Yeah, so he's still in... He was in the American Girl with the Dragon Tattoo as a character called Grieger. So he does do the odd sort of movie role, but for the most part, he's in a lot of and quite massive video games. Yeah. Ratchet and Clank, he's in. I mean, these are all big names in the video game world, and I know that's not generally interesting to this particular audience, but it is fascinating that he's been in big budget stuff.
Yeah, he's transitioned into that. Yeah,
yeah, that sometimes happens though.
Of course. Yeah,
sometimes they'll transition one way or the other.
I think that what was my last point really? What was I going to say? We've talked about the comedic bits. We've talked about the setting. And the setting is nice, but isn't necessarily used to its full potential, possibly due to budgeting.
What do you think the full potential would have been, or what would you have done extra with that?
Well, there should have been more scenes of the monster stalking them in the water.
Yeah.
Get some Jaws things going. Yeah. Almost like that bit in Aliens when Sigourney Weaver's rescuing Newt in the water-filled corridor, and you get like the xenomorph like moving behind her sort of thing. And just... Oh, I was going to talk about his apartment, that was it.
Yeah.
We'll come to that in a minute. And to be honest, I would have done, and obviously I'm a completely different filmmaker, but I definitely would have had the water be a source of danger more. It's just kind of there. No one's ever in danger of the water.
No, it's not, and it doesn't. They keep saying it's because it's going to be high tide and the water's flooding, blah blah blah. But there's never any danger of it rising.
Yeah, there should be a bit like probably in the finale.
Yeah, when they're actually in the subway.
Yeah, that subway should like start flooding or something.
Yeah. I have a question actually on sort of we we tagged on the most likely unintentional gay themes in this, but there is one that we haven't touched upon that I found intriguing conceptually, whether it counts or not, or whether it's just a plot thread that kind of never went anywhere. As much as we've got Dick Durkin and Harley Stone bromance, let's put it that way, when they get into the sewer, like there's a lot of... So Harley's being sent a lot of stuff by the monster. Like the heart at the beginning, and then he keeps on calling out to him and things like that, and he gives him the gun, and the handgun is his partner's old gun. Don't know how he recognises it, because it's just a handgun.
Just quick sidebar before I forget, that was a negative point.
Yeah.
You eventually, after the first flashback with Harley, you get revealed that the reason he's got this psychic connection is the creature scratched him, and he's got those scars at the down his arm.
Scarred all the way down his
They look
arm.
fucking terrible.
Yeah, that is the one bit of makeup that really didn't work.
No, they look awful. It happened, and I was like, I know I'm not seeing what I think I'm seeing.
I think the problem they had with that, the mistake they made, was it looks like it's all one piece, and actually they should have done each scar as a separate piece.
It also isn't anywhere near where, in the actual flashback, it doesn't line up to where the creature actually scratches him.
No.
Because the creature reaches for his chest, but
yeah.
they're on his arm.
Yeah, it didn't make a lot of sense. But
Anyway, sorry.
No, that's all right. But anyway, so we've got a lot of this connection, and then it's later stated that the creature is not only taking the hearts and lives of the victims,
Because it wants to absorb their power.
yeah, but it's also taking their souls. And then it's stated that the DNA they've managed to get off of the creature isn't just a guy. It's basically the DNA of everyone. It's got Harley's DNA,
amalgamating everyone it touches,
and it's got the DNA of his partner.
That's something I've just realised. You never find out where this monster comes from.
Well, it's a demon from hell.
But that's never clarified. That's only
So,
that's a theory that they have, isn't it?
Well, because they figure out that it's coming back is to do with the time of year. It's the year of the rat, and there's rats everywhere in London. It's what was it? Not Taurus, Scorpio. And Scorpio happens to be the star sign with the most connection to psychotic people, like Charles Manson and things like that. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. That's what the film says. That's not me saying all Scorpios are this, that, and the other, or that I believe in that bullshit. But that's just what the film suggests. So it's to do with the occult in that sphere. And that's obviously a remainder of the original occult storyline that before it went into this kind of pseudo sci-fi. Yeah. But so anyway, it's his old partner is in there, soul, DNA, the works. It's all within this monster, and it's using the DNA. It's using the memories of his partner to lure Stone into the underground. That's why it captures the wife or the love interest, Kim Cattrall, and hangs her to break the circle of light and all this stuff. It's all to do with the occult thing, but it's using those things to bring Stone into the equation because it's got to complete the circle that Stone is part of. Now, one part of that I'm going to question, this is the reason that I mentioned the gay thing, is there's all of this about, come to me, you remember me, blah, 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 I've got to do this for my partner, my guy. And then when he gets into the tube train in the finale, the monster actually gets the jump on him and drags its hand down his face. It's quite an iconic image.
Yeah, it takes its... Well, don't use the word iconic.
Well, it's
for this film.
I think that's the one that was used on the album cover.
No, it's not.
Is it
not?
What,
the aborted album cover?
Yeah.
No, it's the first woman who dies with a
Oh,
heart
is
ripped.
it?
Yeah, I looked it up.
Oh, okay, fair play.
It's her laying in the bathtub with a heart ripped out.
I've seen loads of stuff online that's apparently iconic, but okay, fair enough.
It takes his glasses off, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it's kind of weird because it's got the jump on him. It could easily kill him, and it could have just snapped him really quickly because apparently it can move fast at what it's doing. But it just pours its hand slowly down his face, slowly removes his glasses because he didn't have glasses when his partner was still alive. I think that's kind of what that is, and it's like this weird sort of slow stroking of his head, and it doesn't look like it's either wants to kill him or if it's going to kill him the way he remembers him, and that's kind of a bit weirdly romantic. I don't really know.
I appreciate the amount of thought you've put into it. I think my personal opinion, the actual answer there is it's plot armor.
Yeah, I agree with you, but it's kind of interesting. A lot of this film has this if you want to, you can look way more into detail than I think they actually planned to.
Yeah.
Which is where you get the bromance looking more like a romance, and Kim Cattrall is being sidelined for Dick Durkin.
But it's very in your face, the Durkin thing. Like we
Yeah.
said, it's not normal to just be sat stroking his earlobe. And...
No, that was weird. Like, honestly, it's not. We're not exaggerating. When he slams him up against the wall because he's freaking out about rats in the underground, and he's just literally he's grabbed him by the head, and then he's rubbing his little earlobe.
Hey Durkin, hey Durkin, I wish I knew how to quit you.
Different film.
Let's just talk about his apartment real quick.
Yes, please do.
His apartment's hilarious. This is a perfect example of overdoing a concept to the point that it becomes hilarious. It's obviously set up.
So boy.
It's obviously set up to make us believe, this is a man who's in a deep depression, who isn't really caring for himself anymore.
Yeah.
But it's ridiculous. It's filled with roosting pigeons who keep attacking Kim Cattrall.
Yeah.
He has literally stuck chocolates to his fridge door instead of magnets.
Yeah.
Like, just chocolates.
Yeah,
how do you even
the chocolate to melt
How
onto
do you
it?
melt chocolate to a fridge? It's cold. He clearly hasn't washed the dishes in forever.
No, he rests his feet on a V-twin engine that he just happens to have out.
Well, why has he got a... Did
got
you
a
not
motorbike, they
notice
never use it.
he's on the 4th floor.
Yeah, how do you get the
How
bike
do you
up
get the
there?
bike up there? We never see an elevator.
No, it's true.
We
He
only
must
ever
have
see the
walked it up
staircase.
stairs. It's a Harley. It's not even a sports bike. How do
Yeah.
you get it up the bloody stairs?
And he's just got a sink full of dirty dishes, including a mouldy cup of coffee that he then drinks from.
Yeah.
You didn't need all that. You just needed, say, the clutter and the dirty sink.
Yeah.
You didn't need roosting pigeons.
Here's the thing. Like, when he said, "I'm sorry about the pigeons, I couldn't kill them," right? I thought that meant, like, when I first watched it, my first thought was, oh, okay, he couldn't kill them. At first, that just looks like he's sentimental, but because of the way this guy is, what it will be is that he knows that the pigeons will be able to tell when the monster's coming in some way.
Right.
Like, I thought that he would, be like, as soon as they start to fly away, where are the birds? That means something's going down. Because they will only leave if they're in imminent danger, right?
Good idea.
Something like that would have worked. So when I was watching it, I was like, it must be that. Right, I've clocked it.
But it's not.
No, it just never comes back up. They're just there. You're like, oh, all right. And that happens with a lot of things in this film. You're like, you did exactly what I did. Because the reason I asked you halfway through watching, I was like, so what do you think is going to... And you were like, oh, clearly what's happening is that this guy is just imagining it all, and either he's the demon or it's all in his own head, right? And I was like, yeah, cool. And I was like, because that's exactly where my head went, because it's clearly set up for that. It's clearly set up that this guy is nuts.
Yeah, but everything points to that, from the way he acts to the way there's the soft focus in certain scenes.
Yep.
Now, to be fair, maybe that is the original ending, because as we saw in the production notes, the whole final climax of this film was apparently rewritten 12 times.
Yeah.
I reckon there probably was a version at one point where
he
it
was
turned
the
out to be in
monster.
his head.
Yeah.
Because it's completely unbelievable that Durkin survives getting shot in the chest as well.
Yeah, because he gets shot point blank with a shotgun.
And falls out of a 4th-story window.
I think they'd gone down a couple of flights, but it's still second story.
Yeah,
And
fair enough.
he comes back in the next scene.
And just goes, what, you never heard of a Bulletproof Vest?
It's like, here's the thing with Bulletproof Vests that I think filmmakers always forget. Bulletproof Vests will save your life from bullets. That is what they're for. The problem is it's not like bang, that was a bit of a... No, you often break your ribs.
Yeah, and
it just doesn't kill you.
And they can only take so many shots as well. You can't just end... That's not this film, but some films you'll see them just endlessly firing into them.
Yeah, and then
you're
they're
no, they don't
thank
work
God
that
I had
way.
the armour on.
Yeah. To be fair, I'm not sure a standard bulletproof vest would withstand a point-blank shotgun.
No, and the
either.
other thing as well is we don't see him wearing the vest. Now, I understand that the idea is that that's the bait and switch. The interesting part of that's the bit where you start to think he must be nuts. Because this guy's come back and he's fine. Like, there's literally not a bruise.
Doesn't even look like he's fallen 2 stories.
And in fact, he's kind of mocking Stone out of the blue, and that's kind of like his own psychosis mocking him. I
really do reckon there was an ending where it turned out Rutger Hauer was just mad.
Do you think that would have been a better ending than The Monster?
Yeah. The problem is that's such a standard ending with indie films now.
Yeah. That's probably why it got changed.
And the problem with that sort of ending is when it's done badly,
it's
it's
really
really bad.
unfulfilled. Yeah, it doesn't fulfill you at all, does it?
It probably is better just having the actual monster, because at least it's funny.
They
I
could
just
have at
wish
least-
the monster looked better.
Yeah,
And was shot better, like not in bright light like that.
Yeah, I think what they should have done was they should have signposted a few things. Not necessarily have it as obvious as like, right, I'm putting on my bulletproof jet vest now, Stone. You know, it's like he can wear it underneath, but there should be some sign where we see him zip up or do up his tie, and we see the bulletproof vest underneath, and it's just subtle. Any little thing to kind of give away that actually this guy's thought ahead.
Yeah.
But we don't get that. He doesn't think ahead by this point. And these are all this is the things where if the script had a little bit more time in the oven, these are obvious plot discrepancies that could have been fixed in a rewrite. But as they are, like, you and I have just overthought the film.
Yeah.
I enjoyed overthinking this film, though.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, oh man, it's definitely a weird one. I'll give you that. I can't say it wasn't.
I promise you weird.
Yeah.
I delivered.
I can't say it was boring.
No, absolutely not.
So it sounds like we're both kind of middling on the film.
I still enjoy the film. I think it's not going to sell to anyone pretentious, but I think anyone who enjoys something different and a little bit quirky, I think this would sell to. But you would have to be basically going in knowing that it's not a sterling film. I actually don't think there's that much discrepancy other than style between someone who might enjoy this and might enjoy Detention.
Yeah.
Because they're both zany enough that they go... Detention is more comedy and it succeeds more at what it's trying to do. But both of these are zany and kind of go off the point where you're like, hang on, what the fuck? Yeah. They both have that what the fuck quality to them.
Yeah.
And I think for that reason that there's a similarity in audiences for people who long-term would like it. Yeah. Detention has the benefit, though, that teenagers will watch it because it's a teen film as well.
Yeah.
Whereas,
and newer.
Yeah, and whereas this film is very much not. This is not going to be playing in college dorm rooms up and down the country.
I can imagine film students watching this style on so something we used to do at uni was like a bad film night.
Yeah.
Where we'd all get together and watch like, I don't know, The Giant Leech Men from Mars or whatever.
I mean, this is ripe for debate as like what certain things mean, whether certain things were intentional or whether they were not.
This is the thing, isn't it funny how certain films, even though there is that scope for debate within them, as a whole, people just write them off.
Yeah.
As, no, that's stupid, we're not talking about it.
Yeah, and I think this film definitely fits in that category. There is a lot, if you're interested in film discussion, this is absolutely a good film to watch for that. But you're not watching a creme de la... You're not watching Schindler's List and discussing that.
It's weird though, isn't it?
You're watching something that may be your bag or may not be.
It's weird. I think this is something we agree on, but we both know people in the film crowd who are like that, where it's like only certain films are worth talking about in that sense.
Yeah.
But I've always been of the mind that either it's all worth talking about or none of it is.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree.
Because even something shit like, I don't know, Mega Shark versus Giant Octopus or whatever.
Yeah.
That's garbage, but it's still a work of creativity.
So, Video Game Earth Force.
Yeah, it's worth talking about. It's garbage.
That is real garbage.
But somebody tried.
Yeah.
Somebody tried, and God bless them, they should never try again.
Bob Roo.
But, do you know what I mean? Yeah, someone did sit down and go, I think I've got a story to tell.
Yeah.
So fine, let's look at it. Let's talk about that story.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think sometimes some films have more interesting things to talk about.
Of course, yeah.
This film is very much a talk... this is a debate film. That's how I'd view it. If you have friends who you like to discuss films with, you must watch this film. Because it is well up for debate, different interpretation, different things you think it succeeds at or fails at, and what you think those interpretations might mean, and whether or not you're just overthinking the damn thing.
Yeah.
Because, again, this survives on the fact that there is no pretension in it. So certain films... I don't want to say Kubrick, but I mean Kubrick. There are some films, and I love Kubrick, I know you don't, but there are some times where people, I think, look too far into Kubrick films, more so than maybe he did on some films. Not all films. Some films he really did think about. Other films, I don't think he did as much. Dr. Strangelove. And people see more depth in them than there actually is.
Yeah.
But you can't question it, it seems, in a film circuit, because it's a Kubrick. Can't question. Of course it's brilliant. It's a Kubrick. Whereas this doesn't have that pretension to it. So it seems to be a lot more accessible for people looking to debate and argue the merits and the qualities of certain aspects of the film.
Yeah.
So as a debate feature, you're not going to get anyone's back up like you would with, say, a Kubrick or a Hitchcock or something like that. You're going to be able to get that debate in there and have an interesting conversation without anybody hitting their high horse and going, how could you say that about a Rutger Hauer movie? You know?
I'm sure there's a hardcore Rutger Hauer fan club out there
somewhere.
Oh,
yeah. I mean, I've watched RPG, so I know that not everything that man touches is gold.
Well, I think that probably brings us to the end of Split Second. Why was it called Split Second, actually? What does that have to do at all?
Well, because initially it was a buddy cop horror movie. Then they wanted to put some cyberpunk in it and went, well, that's a split-second movie. And then they went, all right, we'll just call it that. I made that up, but that could be as fucking accurate as the
It
real
might
story.
as well be. It might as well be.
I don't know why it's called Split Second. It doesn't say why in the trivia, because it did have different names.
Yeah, well, it was at one point, it was called, like you said, the pentagram, stuff like that.
Yeah, things that actually connect to the story of the film.
Yeah.
But nothing happens in a split second in this film.
Yeah, like
time is never one of the main features.
Yeah, I was expecting time, like I said, flooding or something to be a factor. But
yeah, no, it never comes up. It's like the whole thing being filled with water. It's a cool thing, good name, doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. Well, there you have it, folks. That is our second look at Split Second. Thank you for joining us and listening to us talk about this obscure film from ye old year of 1992. Please do follow us, like us, subscribe, share with your friends, etc., etc.
Cuddle us.
If you could pretty please write us a review. Reviews are hugely important in gaining new listeners for shows and helping us get up the charts. If you want to hear us talk specifically about video game movies, you can listen to our other show, VGMP, the Video Game Movie Podcast, which releases bi-weekly every other Saturday. And is currently in the middle of its 4th season.
Yep.
Although actually by the time this airs will probably be more like at the end of its 4th season. But still, you get what I'm trying to say.
We'll have passed 50 or 60 episodes by the time this comes out.
Yes, we will. And I think that's all there is to say on this lovely sunny day. So, until next time, ladies and gentlemen, that's a wrap.